Wait, where did my belongings go? When I returned to my room, I couldn't find my familiar items, but instead, my grandson's toys and clothes were scattered all around. I thought, did I accidentally enter my grandson's room? But this was definitely my room. The door's position and the view from the window were unchanged. It felt as if my room had transformed into my grandson's. While thinking about this, I heard a faint laugh from behind. "Kate, are you looking for something? Did you just come back from work? You never contribute financially to the household. You should at least take care of the house, right? Isn't that your duty as a mother-in-law? That's why your room disappeared." When I turned around, there was my son's wife, who always teased me. She must have somehow managed to change my room and handle my belongings. Where are my things?" I asked, and she grinned, saying, "I put everything in the trash." Everything? Even my favorite clothes and precious mementos. Yes, everything. Because everything in this room was cluttered and in the way. I couldn't hide feeling surprised and confused at her actions. Even if she didn't like me, she could have talked with me before disposing of my important possessions. To discard all of my belongings without permission, my surprise and anger started to well up. I couldn't continue to live with her and my son, who was allowing her to do this any longer. But before that, I decided to get back at her properly. "My name is Katie. I'm 57 years old and currently live quietly alone in the house where I grew up." I said alone, but in the past, my family used to live here. However, my parents passed away when I was still young, and my beloved husband died a year ago due to the painful disease called cancer. So now I'm alone in this big house. I have an only son, Harry. Since he started working at a major company, he began to look down on me and his father. And he seemed to have changed somehow. He used to be a very lovable child, good at both academics and sports, so he received a lot of praise from neighbors and friends. My husband and I always supported his growth and frequently said, "Well done." However, as he grew older, his self-esteem seemed to have become a bit too high. Even when we got worried and advised him, "Aren't you overestimating yourself a bit?" he would laugh and reply, "Mom and Dad are just ordinary people. So maybe you can't understand someone with special talents like me who excels in both studies and sports." We were increasingly troubled by his attitude. During his school days, Harry seemed to be at the center of attention thanks to his unique charm. But behind that, he tends to look down on others. I always wondered if Harry had any friends he could truly trust. When he was a child, he never brought friends home, which made me think that forming deep bonds with friends might be difficult for him. It seemed like the kids around Harry knew about his hidden personality and kept their distance from him, so I couldn't imagine him playing alone with someone. Then unexpectedly, 2 years ago, Harry came to introduce the unbelievable news that he was engaged to a woman. To be honest, considering Harry's challenging personality, I thought that building a family would be difficult for him, no matter how successful he was at work, but it seemed my thoughts were completely wrong. One day he called me out of the blue and said, "This might surprise you, but I'm currently in a relationship, and I proposed yesterday." She said yes, so I'm going to introduce her to you both tomorrow. Wait, really? Are you going to bring a girl who is engaged with you? Why so sudden? I exclaimed in surprise. On the other end of the phone, Harry sounded a bit frustrated and replied, "I've been saying that, haven't I? Mom, you should sometimes catch on faster. Can't you figure it out in one go? Why are you so stupid?" It had been quite a while since I received a call from my son, but I was disappointed by his choice of words. Compared to when he was in college, it seemed like he had become rough in his speech, even though he started working and increasing his interactions with various people. Had he not learned basic manners? I had thought that becoming a working adult would make him more polite, but he seemed rude towards us. I couldn't understand whether he was behaving this way because he was taking advantage of being an only son, or if this was his attitude towards everyone. Nevertheless, I got worried when I thought about the future wife who would live with him. Given Harry's personality, it was evident that he would take a disrespectful attitude even towards the woman he married. If the fiancée turned out to be truly wonderful, I would advise her to think more carefully about marrying Harry. I made this decision concerning a woman I hadn't even met yet. My husband and I sat on the couch together, and I shared my thoughts. My husband said, "Well, I don't think that boy's nature will change anymore. It's the same as when he was in college. The fiancé probably doesn't know him well yet. He might be hiding his true character. If he's planning to marry her without telling her everything, I'd oppose it too." He understood my feelings. I had always thought that I couldn't allow someone like Harry to marry another family's precious daughter. The next day, as promised, Harry brought his fiancée, Erin. When she arrived, her first words were, "Is this Harry's house? It's surprisingly nice. I imagined a much shabbier place. I thought you guys didn't have much money." And she seemed surprised. She spoke to her future in-laws this way despite coming to discuss their marriage. I couldn't help but think. With some confusion, I invited them into the living room, and then Erin said, "I've been wondering, where's the cake? Our wedding cake? You have it, right?" We didn't know her preferences, or even her name until today. How could we possibly choose and prepare her favorite cake in such a situation? Without realizing it, my husband and I looked at each other, and Erin continued, "Wait, you didn't prepare a cake, just like Harry said. You're completely useless. You can't do anything, can you?" She looked sulky. It sent shivers down my spine. It appeared that she, like Harry, had a personality to look down on people. Initially I felt sorry for her, but now I couldn't sympathize at all. Harry bringing her here was already an unexpected surprise for us, but her behavior and choice of words were beyond anything we could have imagined. My husband and I were left speechless. "Mom and Dad, aren't you guys happy that your son is introducing the person he'll spend the rest of his life with? Isn't that something to be excited about? Normally you'd be thrilled, right?" Harry muttered, looking very irritated. "That's why we don't get along. Seriously, you have no common sense." He laughed openly, not bothering to hide his ridicule. For us, the disrespectful behavior and language of the stranger Erin, as well as Harry laughing without stopping her, they all seemed extremely insane. However, Erin, who didn't seem to think so, pulled Harry's arm and said, "I thought Harry's parents were amazing. Because Harry is so talented. But having smart children doesn't mean parents are the same, huh? Yeah, my dad and mom are both really stupid, so they can't be compared with me. I don't want to introduce anyone to them. But Erin, you are special. You are my fiancée as well." Harry and Erin looked at each other and smiled. With their rude attitude, it felt like we had definitively set the distance between us and them. When we asked them if we could limit our interactions to the bare minimum from now on, they readily agreed. As we were leaving, Erin said, "Both of you, please don't do anything unnecessary anymore." But it was actually us who wanted to sever ties. My husband and I were a bit exhausted, but we talked about how we hoped they would find their own happiness. We decided to have relaxing time afterwards. A few weeks later, Harry and Erin got married. Furthermore, Erin was apparently pregnant. We congratulated the two of them, but they didn't even offer a single word of thanks, leaving us sighing in disappointment. Then, within a year of their marriage, my husband suddenly passed away from an illness. My heart was drowning in sorrow, as if being sucked into a dark void. During this time, relatives and friends gave me warm support, but Harry and Erin's attitude was far from pleasant. Even during the funeral, they appeared irritated, uttering things like, "This is so troublesome, and I want to leave now." However, they actively participated in the discussions about the inheritance held after the funeral. Harry seemed genuinely convinced that my husband, who Harry had always looked down on, would leave him an inheritance. I couldn't help but wonder why he had such expectations. For a while afterward, Harry and I didn't contact each other and kept our distance quietly. It was exactly 1 year after my husband's death when something unexpected happened. I was called to the intercom, and when I went to see who it was, there was Harry, Erin, and a cute child. At first I thought they had come to show their grandchild, so I felt a bit warm inside. However, they didn't show any such signs, and instead, they entered my house as if it were their own. "This room used to be mine, right? Well, you've put all kinds of things in here. I don't need any of this, so please clean it up," Harry said. looking at the room that had now become a storage room. I was too surprised to say anything. Then, Aaron added, "Well, I'll take the room next to Harry's, I guess. It's cleaner than I expected, so I'll choose this one," as if it had already been decided that they would live here. Of course I firmly refused, but they didn't listen, and quickly moved their belongings in. Without any time to think, I suddenly found myself living with Harry's family. Harry and Aaron were absorbed in their new life, and ignored my existence completely. No matter what I talked about, whether it was today's weather, or the news on TV, they didn't respond, and didn't even look at me. I felt like I had become completely invisible. What surprised me the most was how often and forcefully they asked for help with taking care of their child. Steve, my grandson, was always cheerful, and had an adorable smile. Aaron was supposed to be his mother, but she constantly made excuses, and handed Steve over to me, then went out and enjoyed herself. "Aaron, I have work too, and I'm busy. Taking care of Steve every day is a bit much." I tried saying this once, but she always responded with a scowl. "Kate, what are you talking about? What's more important than taking care of your grandson? There's nothing like that. You're being a bit too stupid if you can't understand this without being told." Her attitude is always looking down on me, and she would constantly ask, "Can't you do this or that? Why can't you do it?" Honestly, I had no idea how to deal with her. My daily life had completely changed. The reason I remained in this house was for that cheerful Steve. I worried in my heart about whether he would grow up properly, and whether those two would take care of him if I were no longer here. So even though I was forced to endure Harry and Aaron's overly free-spirited lifestyle, I did my best to bear with it. However, something happened that made all my patience seem wasted. On that day I returned from a business trip that had lasted for several weeks, and I felt that the atmosphere in the house was somehow different. It seemed as if there had been a general rearrangement, even among them. My room was completely different. I couldn't find any of my cherished belongings, and instead, Steve's toys were scattered all over the room. Surprised, I repeatedly searched through the room, but there was no doubt that it was my room, yet all my things had disappeared. What could this mean? I wondered. As I thought this, I heard a soft laugh from behind. When I turned around, Aaron was smiling. "Katie, where have you been all this time? Taking a long break? Going on a trip? You never give us any money. Yet you live so extravagantly, don't you? Shouldn't it be your duty to take care of the house? That's why your room disappeared." Aaron looked down on me as always. She must have somehow managed to get rid of my belongings and change the room. Where are my things?" I asked, and she replied with a smile. "I threw them out in the trash. Everything. My favorite clothes, important mementos, my bank book, and my husband's travel photos, even letters from him. Well, everything. It was all cluttered and in the way in this room." I couldn't hide my surprise and confusion at her behavior. Even if she didn't like me, I wished she had at least asked for permission to casually throw away all my cherished possessions. Gradually a mix of astonishment and anger welled up in me, and my hands began to shake. It seemed like she noticed my feelings too, but she casually said, "If you're so irritated, why don't you just live on your own?" Yes, that's right. I'll do as she says. I left without saying anything. Fortunately, the things Aaron claimed she had thrown away were still in the trash area. However, they had been carelessly tossed into garbage bags, causing some of them to break, and it hurt my heart every time I looked at them. I quickly found a new apartment where I could move in and start a new life without saying anything to Harry, Aaron, or Steve. Of course, I took my precious belongings with me. Then I went to a real estate agent and discussed selling that house. It had recently been renovated and had a trendy, cafe-like atmosphere. It had been completely modernized and cleaned up, and it would be sold quickly for sure. I had hoped that someone would happily live in that house. The only condition was that it should be someone other than Harry or Aaron. The real estate agents were efficient, and the administrative procedures went smoothly. On that day, my phone kept ringing with calls from Aaron. I knew what it was about. but I decided to finish work first and take a rest before answering the phone in the evening. Her first words were really loud. "Why are you selling the house and telling us to leave? What's going on?" I responded calmly. "Well, I don't live there anymore, and it doesn't make sense to keep it. I thought it might as well be lived in by someone else." Erin seemed quite panicking. "But this house became Harry's when his father-in-law passed away." "Right." I took a deep breath and decided to explain slowly. "Actually, all of my husband's inheritance was supposed to come to me. Harry was upset about it, but that's what the will said. My husband never intended to give anything to a person like you." She seemed surprised and was searching for words. "Honestly, I thought about giving the house to you and Harry, but Harry left so suddenly that I dropped the idea. If he had stayed a bit longer that day, if he had listened a bit more, Harry and Erin could have been happily living in that house by now. Why is this coming up all of a sudden? We can't just easily find a new house. I don't know what to do." Erin's voice trembled. "I know. Harry messed up at work, didn't he? I heard he got a significant pay cut. You found out after I was gone, didn't you?" When I said that, she fell silent on the other end of the phone. Harry is certainly capable at work, but his attitude of looking down on others made him lose his reputation at the office. And one day, not recognizing a high-ranking executive of a crucial client, Harry insulted him just like he always did. This strained the relationship between Harry's company and the client, and Harry was held responsible. He had his salary cut and was eventually transferred to a dead-end department, so financially struggling, and with his pride, Harry probably had no choice but to rely on my house. Plus, Harry has too much pride about himself. There's no way Erin knew that the house was my property, that Harry hadn't contributed to our living expenses, and that I was the one supporting the household. She must have thought that if I were gone, the house would be more comfortable to live in. So she decided to get rid of my belongings as a way to kick me out of the house. In the end it worked, and she must have been happy. Erin whispered, "I'm sorry, Please, Katie, don't sell the house. Come back to us. Please." Her voice was trembling more than ever before. However, I had no intention of returning to that house. Living with Harry and Erin was nothing but stress for me. "Erin, listen, I've already talked to your mom and dad about this matter. So from now on, will you talk with your parents about things? As far as I'm concerned, our relationship is over," I said firmly. She responded with a surprised "Huh? Did you tell them about us?" "No way." "Right. What about Steve? Isn't your grandson important? Steve is incredibly cute, and I love him dearly, but it doesn't matter if he's my grandson or not. Taking care of him alone for 2 years was tiring. I am so sick of it. You two have been doing whatever you want to do until now, so why don't you continue to do so? I have no more interests in this, and let's make today the last time we get involved. I don't want that house to be used without my permission, so please move out soon. If you insist on staying, I'll take it up with the police." I said all of this in one go, and then hung up the phone. Afterward, I immediately set Erin and Harry's contact numbers to block. Later, Harry found out that Erin had kicked me out of the house. "Why did you kick my mom out? My mom owns this house," Harry exclaimed. "If you had told me everything from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this situation. It's all your fault. You used to work for a good company, but you got your salary cut and were pushed to a corner. Are you really that foolish?" "I'm not the one to be blamed," Erin talked back. Their relationship quickly turned sour, and they didn't start the moving process at all. In the end, Erin's parents stepped in and came to pick them up and their son, Steve. I heard later that in order to raise Steve in a healthy environment, a relative couple had adopted him as their foster child, and they all began to live together. Harry and Erin have been constantly arguing about their divorce now. It's quite childish, and listening to it is exhausting. On the other hand, my life has regained a lot of stability. I used to be constantly drained by their problems, but since selling the house, I have more time and money for myself. I hadn't received any financial support for 2 years, and I took care of my grandson, so this financially stable life is refreshing. If I had continued to live with them, my savings might have been completely depleted by now. From now on, I want to forget about Harry and Aaron and enjoy a more relaxing life, such as reading leisurely in a quiet cafe, watching my favorite movies, and maybe even discovering a new hobby. I'm looking forward to this time in my life and want to enjoy it the most.